What if I told you that modern Europe, a continent of diverse languages, cultures, and nations, owes its foundation to one man, a king who turned warring tribes into a unified empire, a ruler crowned emperor by the Pope himself, a visionary who sparked a renaissance in an age of darkness? His name was Charlemagne, but his legacy has earned him a grander title, the Father of Europe. Who was this towering figure? Was he a ruthless warlord, a genius statesman, or a divine instrument in the hands of history? Join us as we uncover the life and legacy of a man who redefined what it meant to rule, by the sword, by faith, and by sheer will. Chapter 1: A Fractured World and a Young King. The story begins in the 8th century, a time of chaos and division. The Roman Empire had fallen centuries earlier, leaving Europe a patchwork of feuding tribes. The Franks, a Germanic people, held sway over what is now France and parts of Germany, but their rule was anything but secure. Enter Pepin the Short, a man who refused to accept mediocrity. Though born a mere mayor of the palace, he deposed the last of the Merovingian kings and crowned himself king of the Franks. Bold? Yes. Controversial? Absolutely. Among Pepin's children was Charles, later to be known as Charlemagne. Born in 748, Charles grew up in a world of intrigue and ambition. He learned early that power was not inherited, it was seized. When Pepin died in 768, his kingdom was divided between Charles and his younger brother Carloman. The two kings were supposed to rule jointly, but their relationship was anything but harmonious. Rivalry festered, threatening to undo everything Pepin had built. Then, in 771, Carloman died suddenly. Was it illness? Or something more sinister? History remains silent. What is clear is that Charles moved swiftly. He claimed his brother's lands and became the sole ruler of the Franks. At just 23 years old, he had already proven himself to be as ambitious as his father, but his journey was just beginning. Chapter 2: Conquest and Consolidation. Charlemagne's first test of leadership came from the north of Italy. The Lombards, a powerful kingdom, were pressing hard against the Papal States. The Pope turned to Charles for help. In 774, Charlemagne responded. Leading his troops across the treacherous Alps, he launched a bold and brutal campaign against the Lombards. After a grueling siege, the Lombards surrendered, and Charlemagne crowned himself their king. This was no ordinary victory. It was the beginning of a new kind of ruler. A king who was not bound by tribal loyalties, but sought to rule over many peoples. But the Lombards were only the beginning. Charlemagne's longest and bloodiest campaigns were waged against the Saxons, a pagan people who resisted his authority for decades. The most infamous episode came in 782, at Verdun. After a rebellion, Charlemagne ordered the execution of 4,500 Saxons who refused to convert to Christianity. To his supporters, this was a necessary act of faith, a defense of Christendom. To others, it was a ruthless display of power. Over 30 years, Charlemagne subdued the Saxons, integrating their lands into his empire. He didn't just conquer, he transformed. By sword or sermon, he spread Christianity across his domains, reshaping the cultural and spiritual map of Europe. Chapter 3: The Vision of an Emperor. Charlemagne was not content to be a warrior king. He envisioned something greater, a unified Christendom guided by learning, law, and faith. At his court in Aachen, he gathered the brightest minds of his age. Scholars like Alcuin of York spearheaded a cultural revival that would later be known as the Carolingian Renaissance. Ancient texts were preserved, new schools were established, and literacy spread among the elite. Charlemagne himself took an interest in education, encouraging his children, sons and daughters alike, to study the liberal arts. He also reformed the church, standardizing liturgy and strengthening its role in governance. Under Charlemagne, the church became not just a spiritual institution but a pillar of imperial unity. Then came the defining moment of his reign. On Christmas Day, 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. For the first time in 3 centuries, the title of emperor had returned to the West. Charlemagne's coronation was more than a political act. It was a statement. Rome's legacy lived on, and Charlemagne was its heir. Chapter 4: A Legacy of Unity. But even the greatest empires are fragile. When Charlemagne died in 814, his empire passed to his son Louis the Pious. Under Louis, cracks began to show. Rivalries among his heirs eventually led to the Treaty of Verdun in 843, dividing the empire into 3 parts. Yet, Charlemagne's influence endured. His reforms in law, education, and governance shaped Europe for centuries. He laid the foundation for modern nations, including France and Germany, and inspired the very idea of a united Europe. Today, his name is synonymous with unity. The Charlemagne Prize, awarded annually, honors those who further the cause of European integration, a testament to the enduring vision of a man who lived over 1,200 years ago. Chapter 5, The Man Behind the Myth. But who was Charlemagne, the man? Einhard, his biographer, describes him as a giant, both in stature and presence. Over 6 feet tall, he towered over his contemporaries. He loved music and hunting, enjoyed lavish feasts, and took pride in his family. He was a devoted father, ensuring that even his daughters received an education. Yet, his personal life was complicated. He had multiple wives and concubines, and his political alliances were often forged through marriage. Charlemagne died in 814, leaving behind an empire that would soon fragment, but his legacy lived on in the hearts and minds of those who came after. For centuries, he was celebrated as a Christian knight, a warrior king, and a unifier of nations. His story became legend, inspiring countless tales of heroism and faith. His story is not just history, it is the story of Europe itself. What do you think? Was Charlemagne a hero, a villain, or something in between? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, stay curious.